This week, we look back at one of the most well-known tragedies in maritime history. Ahoy, travelers, it's Amy with Cruising from the Ozarks, and today we're going to diverge a little from our traditional cruise news roundup as we reflect on one of the biggest cruise news stories of all time. Today marks the 111th anniversary of the sinking of the RMS Titanic. In the late hours of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg in the northern Atlantic Ocean. This occurred while it was on its inaugural sailing from Southampton, England to New York. By 2:20 on the morning of the 15th, the ship was no more, and 1,517 passengers lost their lives in what is still considered the deadliest peacetime sinking of a single ship. And the safety of passenger ships changed forever. We all know the story. Considered unsinkable, the Titanic struck an iceberg, punching multiple holes below the waterline along the starboard side of the ship, causing there to be just too much damage for the unsinkable ship to sustain. The 20 lifeboats that were on board could only hold 1,178 people if fully loaded. About half of the 2,224 souls that were actually on board the Titanic. Not all of the lifeboats were able to be lowered, and those that did reach the water were not filled to capacity, which only added to the tragic outcome of the day. The Titanic contained passengers from the poor on their way to seek a new life in America to the rich vacationing on the newest, biggest, and best ship of their time. Passengers from every class lost their lives that day. The final resting place of the Titanic was discovered in 1985. And while many explorations have been made and items have been rescued from the bottom of the sea and placed in museums around the world, soon what is left of the Titanic will be no more. The sea will destroy what remains, and all that is left of the Titanic will be found in museums and history books. While no one would ever be so arrogant to call a ship unsinkable today, I think history has taught us to not make such claims. Today's cruise ships can withstand much more that the sea has to offer than Titanic or any other ship of its time. And as massive as the Titanic was in 1912, it would be dwarfed by most cruise ships today, especially Royal Caribbean's Oasis-class ships. There is one current news story that relates to this past tragedy, but before we get to that, if you enjoyed this video, maybe learned something, be sure to let us know by commenting and giving this video a thumbs up. It only takes a second, and doing so helps cruisers like you find us. This week we saw the MS Rotterdam head off on a transatlantic that mirrors their first crossing 150 years ago. Of course, the current Rotterdam is the seventh in a long line of ships bearing that name for the Holland America line. While on its current voyage across the Atlantic, the captain stopped the Rotterdam at the coordinates where the Titanic lies, and then performed a ceremony honoring the lives lost during the tragedy. I can only imagine what it would have been like on the Rotterdam as passengers looked down into the depths of the ocean while reflecting on the tragedy that occurred there. And while many of us do know the story of the Titanic, we've seen photos of the ship and how gorgeous the first class areas were. We've read stories of the surviving passengers, news articles of the day. We've seen pictures from the Carpathia that came and rescued those that did survive and were able to get on a life raft. However, if you're not that familiar with the Titanic story, maybe you've heard of it, but you really don't know much about it, why don't you think about spending a little bit of time today? Look it up, look at some of the photos, read some of the survivor stories, and spend just a little bit of time reflecting on all those lives lost. Why not stick around and check out this video and then come back for more information designed to help you have an amazing cruise. Have a blessed week, everyone.